We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Welcome back to Roundtable. We are here with Stephen Collins, a Roundtable contributor who has been in and out of Roundtable and is always here to drop knowledge. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me, man. I always enjoy coming in here. It's always great to get on Roundtable. The community's great. You guys have some a great community of people with knowledge to share. I learn something from you guys every day.
Well, you just dropped a lesson, before we went on camera. You went live and dropped a huge bombshell just on probably a lot of people, just in what we're going to get into today. For starters, I want us to first give us an update on Indo Enterprise.
So Indo Enterprise is we're making progress. We are a small minority-owned and operated business going through its challenges, just like everyone else.
Shout out.
So shout out to small business and minority business. I understand the struggle, but we're going through the everyday struggle of historical things that I couldn't contribute to, access to things, because the life and death of most businesses is access to capital, and we're going to probably cover that a little bit later. But there's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there, but a lot of them die on the vine because of access to capital, and some of that has been systemic, and we're going to cover some of those things later on in our discussion today. So, but as far as Indo, I could say we're still going through some of those same obstacles. There's a lot of capital. There's a lot of growth. This country, I see construction and new development and regentrifying a lot of communities. So I see billions and billions of dollars are being spent, but certain people are still not having the same access to build.
The same hustle exists.
Yeah, the same hustle exists, just rebranded. It's got a different label on it. So. And I'm not saying the opportunity is not out there, but we cannot disregard the fact that it's not as easy as it is for certain people.
And we're going to get into that as we move forward with this edition. First off, happy holidays to those that are watching. We first want to, acknowledge, thank you to the Roundtable community, listeners, viewers. You know what it is. Thanks for watching and listening. It's important that we remember that this holiday is about being with your family and your loved ones, but also about being aware. Like, focus on what a lot of people are doing this time of year. They're doing what? They're consuming. Whether you're buying presents or you're selling presents, like, people are consuming. That this is a high spending period for the country, for the world, really. I mean, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of American business and U.S. capital that's invested, this time of year, and then a lot is generated around this time of year at the same time. But what we also need to pay attention to, and I'm glad you didn't touch on it yet, Stephen, because it's important that we invest in the communities that we're trying to defend, that we're trying to fight for, because we have to remember this country wasn't started by African business. It was started through native, indigenous, and African slavery. So right. We forget that we were the employees to an empire that we'd had no say-so in developing.
No investment. Either. No residual, no 401k, no benefits. No wealth was generated from that, and I'm glad you brought that up. I'm gonna be glad to touch on that when we get to that part of the segment.
And just as a heads up, we're going to get into, and we have a poll going around currently for our Roundtable viewers and listeners. The Dallas Morning News article, SMU police looking for crew of 5 after white supremacist banners and flyers appear on campus. Basically, the racist students are, we're back to what we've been talking about with Texas all along. We're a red state. We talked about it off camera. We're in the Bible Belt. There's a conservative Christian ideology that only the white face deserves the spotlight, and their viewpoint is supposed to be held higher than any other minority viewpoint, because we look at without even thinking about it, we look at America and we think, well, that's a white country. Right. But there's never ever been a white nation since this planet's existed.
It doesn't, and you're right. And anytime you have any predicament, I'll even remove the discussion of racism, even though we're going to get there. Um, anytime you have any group of people where the controlling member is only one perspective, you're never going to have a good diverse, and that's what this is all about, diversity, like you have here displayed so eloquently on your table. If you don't have a diverse group of people contributing, that's not, for one, that's not considered freedom. Let's just be plain and be upfront with it. But what it is you're not giving everyone equal opportunity. Whether you say it or do it, it's the action of equal opportunity, because this is supposed to be the land of the free, home of the brave. So if that is a true statement, everyone should have equal access to the resources here, because a lot of our communities years ago were redlined, and we did not have access to capital, so our parents and grandparents could not build up any generational wealth, and they didn't develop the communities around where we resided, so the communities went down versus increased in value. So that generational wealth you could pass on to your next of kin, your kids and grandkids, so they can move on. So when you can sell a home, buy it at one price, it build up an equity for another price. That's equity you can use to do other things. There's a lot of great black business and minority business, period. But if you don't have access to capital, it does not matter how great your idea is.
Well, and then also we have to understand that the slaves were the employees. People say, "Oh no, well the slaves, that's why it was so bad because they weren't paid." Well, no, there's always a good traded for a service. They ate, they had a place to sleep. These were terrible conditions. The Africans were crunched up like confetti in boxes. Like on the boats.
Cargo, treated as cargo.
You know what I mean? And so, but they had a place to live and everything. But here's the thing: they were treated as commodity, as the fact that these are expendable. We can throw them in the ocean. We don't need them. We
can kill them.
And I mean, people forget that this is the concept of employer to employee today in America. That's the upper crust of corporate America does not care about the minimum wage. The minimum wage was there for the unions are the ones that got the minimum wage put up there, not corporate America.
Right.
And people forget that we could have child, slavery in America if it wasn't for us having a conscience and saying that everyone deserves to be paid.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And we have that today. Like you said, the upper crust wants to have more and not redistribute the wealth to where we can have more entrepreneurs and have more people involved in new business. That's the way country grows, when you create new wealth. New wealth is very important to the development of any country. It is. Because new entrepreneurship, I believe in it. I like to see it. I like meeting new entrepreneurs. So shout out to anybody that's an aspiring or early entrepreneur. We understand the hustle and the grind. We love you for it. Keep going.
But understand that it is a hustle. That it is forever a hustle. It is not. It's not about, okay, well, if I get a real job, I can save up or I can invest in. Like this concept of saving your way out of poverty is just a mythology.
It's like
to buy into that is naive.
You want to buy freedom or something. You can't do it. You have to go create it, and make it for yourself. And I think some of the things we'll talk about when we had some affluent communities, when you go do those things, that's what you can do. You can create those things. So.
Right. All right. So I want to talk about Black Wall Street. Yeah. We've been getting into it. The history just of racism, we kind of went backwards a little bit, but it's fine. The idea is we have to know where we came from to know where we're going. And so we have to understand what it was like to have Africans that built their own infrastructure in America. And I want to start with, I pulled it up on the Wikipedia article, Greenwood, Tulsa. Greenwood is a neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as one of the most prominent concentrations of African American business in the United States during the early 20th century. It was probably, well, I mean, we mentioned Black Wall Street, but that's what I wanted to give for our roundtable viewers and listeners. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. But now we can get off of Wikipedia because that was just too easy. I want to pull up the even deeper overview on what it was like to live in Greenwood District. And we're going to get, first of all, we have to remember, in the 20s, the early 1900s, this is barely post-Emancipation Proclamation, so there's just
Great
a bunch
Depression.
There's just, you were led into that.
You're led into that.
And so then we have a bunch of Africans that are just walking the streets with nothing to do, unemployed. Those
nowhere to live.
Yeah, nowhere to stay, no benefits. They can't qualify for anything.
Sharecropping probably was the only job that we could continue doing what you're doing just so you could live here. Right. And a lot of them ended up in more debt because to get the tools they had to buy from somebody else, to get the seeds and you're renting the space. See, that's the one thing that we need to learn here, and I think a lot of us in our community are not learning. Buy the property in which you do business. Buy it. Own it.
Well, take something back from what you've invested in. Why is it you have to be, tell me, Roundtable, why is it we have to be employees? Right. Why is it we have to give all of our influence and all of our ability to someone else's vision?
Correct, yeah. Because really all you're doing is exchanging time for money. An entrepreneur, you have to do all of that. And we go through that. It's all yours. Yeah, you're creating the residual, because that's what creates wealth, is creating residual and generational wealth. You need residual income. What it's called is passive income. When you create passive income, you could go on vacation. You could take your family, go visit your mother, go take care of a sick relative or something, and you're still generating some form of income. See, going to work, you're exchanging time for money. So for whatever minutes, hours you put in, you're exchanging that for time.
You might not qualify for overtime if you don't work 40 hours a week. So you have to for some people, you have to get multiple jobs that are part-time because they can't pay you. And I mean, the hustle is too obvious with the rat race. I don't know how people can't see that today. Right. With the war on poverty, that there's not the government and the system, at least that we operate under, does not want to eliminate the poverty. The poor class, the underclass, especially if we're talking about African Americans.
No. And anyone, definitely not African Americans, but definitely anyone for that matter, because there are solutions. I meet with people all the time to stimulate some of those communities. Mm-hmm. That's what I do as a business. That is one of Indo Enterprises where I'm proud to say we try and stimulate lower income communities. And we're working in multiple cities. Shout out to Reef Urban in Memphis, Tennessee.
Shout out.
He's doing some phenomenal work with recycling and employing formerly incarcerated people, people with disabilities, veterans. Those are the people that he is going for. So, but we'll get back to that's a whole other thing. But that is a African American entrepreneur. So I wanted to give him a shout out because I appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm enjoying our partnership.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the Greenwood District. So Tulsa beckoned multiple souls early in I'm reading this from www.okhistory.org publications. Shout out. And so the Greenwood District, Tulsa beckoned multiple souls in the early 1900s. These seekers, white and African, these are the small handwriting, or at least small typewriting on here, white and African American alike shared a vintage American optimism. They came in search of a better life. The overwhelming majority of the African American migrants eventually located in the area that would become the Greenwood District, the main thoroughfare of which was called the Black Wall Street. As the Greenwood District began to emerge in the early 1900s, rigid segregation held away. Segregation, ironically, gave rise to a nationally renowned black entrepreneurial center. As families arrived and homes sprang up in the Greenwood District, the need for retail and service businesses, schools, and entertainment became pronounced. A class of African American entrepreneurs rose to the occasion, creating a vibrant, vital, self-contained economy that would become Black Wall Street, the talk of the nation. You mentioned that earlier, just in terms of self-sustaining.
Self-sustaining. So I want you guys to think about that. Let's really take a minute and pause and think about this. Think about the term Black Wall Street. Anytime you give something a name to something that is humongous, our Wall Street is huge. That is our whole financial infrastructure. So for this area in the early 1900s to give even a similar name of something, that was powerful. And I want to ask you guys a question. What happened to it? Something that powerful and that self-sustaining and that wealthy, what happened to it? Because that's what creates the generational wealth for the next generation.
And you were also, I know we've talked about it before, like what happened to the market for historically Black colleges and universities. Like it's the same hustle. Like the money was just invested somewhere else. And so, and then they took the people who had all the ideas.
Right.
Or all the people.
And they took the resources. See, that's the thing. To talk about the hustle, let's go to that. Right now, we're all up in arms over a man kneeling during a song. Right. In the end of the day, it's a song. Right. But we'll get back to that later. But you're right. You take the resources out of there, you reinvest the money, and now the historically Black colleges are losing. These schools are barely making it. Every year they're looking for funding and budget and always short on growth. But when I see all the other universities, their growth is doubling. Their class sizes are in the thousands, sometimes hundreds for sure. And why do we not see any growth in historically Black colleges? So before desegregation in sports happened, that was where all the talent came from. So again, another hustle, like you said, reallocate the resources, drain the resources from one area.
And this was done on purpose. It wasn't like the white people just had the better ideas.
Right. Yeah. This was another systemic issue of let's show you who has the power. Again, you have to have ownership of your brand, your business. Own that. Own the building that you reside in, or at least work to the point to getting it, and own it, trademark it, own everything you can about your business. That's the one thing I'm learning as an entrepreneur. You need to maintain control of your business and your brand.
As we continue on, so the Black Wall Street, more commonly known as Greenwood Avenue, had it all. Nightclubs, hotels, cafes, newspapers, clothiers, movie theaters, doctors and lawyers' offices, grocery stores, beauty salons, shoe shine shops, and more. So developed and refined was Greenwood Avenue, the heart of the Greenwood district, that many compared it favorably to legendary thoroughfares such as Beale Street in Memphis and State Street in Chicago.
Right. So two more predominantly Black areas that now I just visited both of those, just came from both of those, and the areas where you're talking about now they're dilapidated, they're beat down, drug infested, run down. What happened to them?
Well, people have to understand also that when the destabilization of a neighborhood happens, it starts with the stuff we were talking about, with the looting, with the robbing, the drugs crimes going up. Yeah. Oh God, what's going on? We can't. There used to be in Fort Worth. There used to be a Walmart closer to downtown, but they had to shut it down because people kept robbing the store. See, the thing is that was done on purpose. That justifies Sam Walton saying, "I don't want to invest money in that area. Right. It's too overrun, with crime." And I mean, it makes the people who are trying to build a brand, who are trying to invest in DFW, shout out to our DFW entrepreneurs and business owners.
DFW, shout out.
But it makes it harder for us to get the reputation we deserve in investing in our own communities first, like you were saying.
Correct. Yeah. And that is definitely the problem. And when you have that systemic problem, again, that's another systemic issue, because if you look. African American people do not own any gun manufacturers, but we have a lot of weapons in our communities. Um, we don't own any marijuana or any poppy seed plants or anything that can manufacture these illicit drugs, but we always seem to be caught with them. How do they get there? So that's part of the thing. When you insert a problem and you remove all the health system and groceries, and when you remove all those things, how can a community thrive? And you reallocate the resources, like you mentioned. All those things add up to why these communities are the way they are, because we just read about all of them, and they were thriving at one time. And whenever you see a problem that's across the country, those are all different cities. So you have to know that there's a systematic problem. When it's an isolated thing, it's a one-time occurrence.
But and then we also have to pay attention to the game. Oh well, the poor culture are always the ones that are attached to this. It's just too many poor people that don't know how to control themselves.
But those same neighborhoods were
I mean?
affluent at one time. They were affluent at one time. So what happened to them? And that's what we want you guys to sit there and think about. And please, Roundtable, give us your feedback. Really tell me what you may think what happened to a community like that. Because I'm going to pose it as a question to get you to thinking, because we want this to be interactive and want you guys to participate. But if an affluent neighborhood just all of a sudden went to where it was a poverty-stricken community, what happened and why? That's a huge question to ask. I'm a represent the Negro League baseball team. That's a business. That was a business. What happened to it? Why is it gone?
Small business at that.
Yeah. Well, it was big business because we took over the major leagues at that time. So if you really think had that have grown, what would that have been today?
Well, but you have to understand, for there to be such a popular, league that's it carries like so many minority groups, or at least it welcomes so much diversity within its surroundings. For something to catch fire like that and then to be destabilized and not be able to be, like, we talk about the bailouts all the time about how, we haven't, but it's been discussed how certain companies are too big to fail. But when the Negro League was destabilized, it was too big to fail. But it still failed, and we still have the MLB now and the minor leagues. But I mean, that's mainly that's basically, we're just going to take the league from you that you guys created and you developed. And I mean, there's a justification for the minor league teams.
It is.
So I mean, in any sport,
right.
But yet the money being, the wealth redistribution move happening.
I'll give examples in multiple industries how we know that this is a problem. In sports, in the major sports, American sports that we play, basketball, football, and baseball, and you guys could argue me if those aren't the three prime sports that we have. In hockey, I'll throw it in there, but for the most part, baseball, football, and basketball, or we all agree that those are American sports? For the most part?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I don't want to misspeak, but when the employees make up the majority of the league, but they make up the minority of ownership. One example. In all three leagues. Football, we're 70% African American.
You're just talent on display, basically.
Yeah. Basketball, until we started recruiting internationally, we were about 90%. But even still, people of color in the NBA were at least over probably 60%, I would say. And even baseball. Most of them come from, the islands and stuff, but they are people of color. So they make up a large percentage of Major League Baseball, an American sport, branded as an American sport. Baseball is. So why are we not rising to the leadership and ownership of these businesses, but we always make up the majority?
And we forget also the neoliberal agenda of it's okay for us to have an opinion as long as there's a white face leading us.
Right. And then we'll skip to another industry, the marijuana industry. Huge, multi-billion-dollar industry. We make up probably 80, 75, probably 70 to 80% of the incarceration rate. So obviously we know what to do, but we make up less than 1% in business ownership in the legal side. So you see there's a disparity in every category of where we make up the majority of the employment, but never the ownership.
In the
Just think
spring of 1921, underlying social and economic tension in Tulsa sparked the worst race riot in American history. As many as 300 people lost their lives. Property damage ran into the millions of dollars. The Greenwood District, the 35 square block area that comprised the city's entire African American community, lay in ruins. Tulsa's African Americans ultimately turned tragedy into triumph. They rebuilt the ravaged Greenwood District, which by 1942 boasted 242 black-owned and black-operated business establishments. Integration, urban renewal, a new business climate, and the aging of the Greenwood District pioneers caused the community to decline through the years beginning in the 1960s and continued throughout the 1970s and early 1980s. Few businesses remained at the end of the 20th century. Interesting.
So
the Greenwood Cultural Center, a multi-purpose educational, arts, and humanities complex promoting history, culture, and positive race relations, anchors the modern-day Greenwood District. This multi-million-dollar community landmark, constructed in the 1980s, serves as a direct link to the district's storied past and as a living memorial to the legacy of Tulsa's historic Greenwood District and its Black Wall Street. Hannibal B. Johnson. Shout out to okhistory.org.
So, what you just read stated they rebuilt it twice. Not once, twice. What happened to it? I'm going to keep asking that question until somebody can give us a good answer. Because it's becoming very interesting to me that these communities keep failing when they were doing pretty good. So,
It's like, well, you were revitalized. The defibrillator hit your heart and you woke up.
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden, it just stopped beating again.
And again, and again, and across multiple cities. Mound Bayou, Mississippi, same thing, an affluent black community. Not anymore. Eatonsville, Florida. Nicodemus, Kansas. All black towns. You hear that? Plural. Towns of Oklahoma. Towns.
Yep.
Here's one that I didn't know. Many of you Texans, since we're in Texas, shout out to you Texans. Did you know that Houston, Texas, 4th Ward was originally a affluent black community? If I recall, the 4th Ward is that where Texas Southern is, about the 4th or 5th Ward?
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, another community that in the early 20th century was an affluent community.
But we have to remember also Houston, the Houston settlement, Houston basically is the beginning of Texas, the Texas culture. So
sounds like we created it.
But we need to pay attention. There were slaves in Houston.
Right.
And there were people that owned those slaves. Now, this isn't talked about in the history books openly like it should be, but this capital and this wealth that was developed for the Anglo-Saxon culture, that started in Houston. Yeah. So imagine a black-owned business, a neighborhood full of black-owned businesses and infrastructure.
Right. Yeah, and then let me just segue into that. Think about that. Let's talk about slavery just for a quick second. And we all know what slavery is.
You're wearing an interesting shirt too, by the way,
yeah.
Stephen.
Oh yeah, shout out to Harriet Tubman. True job, freedom rider. Anybody that's willing to put their life on the line for other lives, that's a true job. So shout out to firefighters, EMTs, police officers, our military. Anybody that's really, truly a soldier that protects people and puts their life on line for another person, shout out to you. But definitely Harriet Tubman, because she was all of those in one to me. If you really think about her job, she was a nurse, she was an educator, she was a freedom rider. I mean, she was all of those in one. But so all those communities, like with slavery. So think about this today. Let's go with let's think about it. 2017 slavery. If you could have a slave today and have them do everything for you for free, couldn't you start a big business? you'd have a lot of time, wouldn't you?
A lot of wealth too.
Lot of wealth, a lot of time. The two things an entrepreneur needs. So think about that. If somebody could clean your house, cook for you, take care of your kids, and then when you do come up with an idea or take your idea, go turn it in, and now it's mine. You didn't have to do any work. You just sat there and instructed and took it. Because there's a lot of black inventions and a lot of black wealth that we're forgetting about. The Jack Daniels recipe was created by a black man and his two sons, and it just came out. So see, that wasn't Jack Daniels. That was another man's creation.
And yet Jack Daniels is famous for his liquor. I'm glad I didn't buy Jack Daniels like recently when I was going Christmas shopping. The thing is, these are the things we forget when we don't invest into minority businesses. I agree, Stephen. I agree completely. And it hurts. It's like, well, how can we complain about racism and we drink Jack Daniels?
Right. Yeah. When the recipe was created by one of us, and it's the only bottling company that actually uses an Anglo person to represent that, which is a totally misconception.
Yeah, because prohibition of alcohol was the face for prohibition.
Yeah. See, so when we keep seeing the same thing, we're talking about something that happened over 150 years ago now, and now we're talking about the same thing in 2017, just differently. Like I said, I will bet any one of you viewers, if you have a skyline view or a city view of any city in this country, you will see an economic stimulus going on right now. I see cranes and skyscrapers in every city, and I travel. Just in the last...
Always a lot of construction, highways still being built.
So where is the wealth being generated? First of all, where is the capital coming from to spend that money? You got to have money to spend.
Follow the money. You notice the toll roads are done out here in Dallas, Texas, out here in DFW. The toll roads are completed.
Yeah.
The cops know to stay off of those roads because they know that there's a lot of rich white people that are probably drunk driving or high on cocaine that are out there in between the numbers, you know what I mean, running a business and taking a break and then go doing what they really do and then coming back and going back to work, so they don't need a bunch of traffic, holding them up, namely from the police. But then you have the public roads where people that are barely getting by on minimum wage and full-time pay at that. They might have, a single dad or single mom with 1 or 2 kids that just got a ticket because their headlight went out.
Right. Yeah. A minor infraction is turned into going to jail, possibly.
This person might have been on the way to paying their LLC fees to start their own cooking business, or to start their own teaching company, or what I mean, their own representative agency or something, or management company. The thing is, that money then got siphoned off from them and went into a ticket because we only have so much money. You only have so much money a month, so you only can make so much. When you're hustling and you're living off minimum wage. Trying to, it's like it's a hustle.
And again, to your point, when you have something, when certain areas are over-policed or overworked, I ask that question because how do people of color, their communities are over-policed, but yet and still drugs and guns come into our community? You would think that would get caught before it got there because they have to come in. Guns and drugs don't just show up. They don't magically appear. So you would think if you were truly policing and over-policing, you'd be catching them coming in, not once they're gone.
Well, and I think, I want to also break it down. We're going to be getting into a lot of, Oklahoma history on Roundtable for this episode. Shout out to our Roundtable viewers and listeners. Thanks for watching and listening.
I got a special shout out for Oklahoma. My grandfather was from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Ooh, okay, there we go.
Yeah, shout out to Tulsa. Shout out, I got special love for y'all.
Shout out to Grandpa Collins.
Yeah, well, he would be Barry, but Barry. He was a veteran. He was an Army veteran.
Hey, rest in peace, brother. Yep. Shout out to him.
Shout out to him as a veteran, Army veteran.
All right, so we've talked about the Greenwood district. Now we're going to talk about the race riots that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
The 300 people that were killed, right?
Well,
Over 300.
and let's go ahead and jump into it. One of the most significant events in Tulsa's history was the race riot that occurred in 1921. Following World War I, Tulsa boasted one of the most affluent African American communities in the country, known as the Greenwood. We've already talked about that. This thriving business district and surrounding residential area was referred to as Black Wall Street. In June of 1921, a series of events nearly destroyed the entire Greenwood area. On the morning of May 30th, 1921, a young black man named Dick Rowland was riding in the elevator in the Drexel building at 3rd and Main with a woman named Sarah Page. The details of what followed vary from person to person, and accounts of an incident circulated among the city's white community during the day and became more exaggerated with each telling. Tulsa police arrested Rowland the following day and began an investigation. An inflammatory report in the May 31st edition of Tulsa Tribune spurred a confrontation between black and white armed mobs around the courthouse, where the sheriff and his men had barricaded the top floor to protect Rowland. Shots were fired, and the outnumbered blacks began retreating to the Greenwood Avenue business district. In the early morning hours of June 1st, 1921, Black Tulsa was looted and burned by white rioters. Governor Robertson declared martial law, and the National Guard troops arrived in Tulsa. Guardsmen assisted firemen in putting out fires, took imprisoned blacks out of the hands of vigilantes, and imprisoned all black Tulsans not already interned. Over 6,000 people were held at the conventional hall and the fairgrounds, some for as long as 8 days. 24 hours after the violence erupted, it ceased. In the wake of the violence, 35 city blocks lay in charred ruins. Over 800 people were treated for injuries, and contemporary reports of deaths began at 36. In 2001, the Tulsa Race Riot Commission released a report indicating that historians now believe close to 300 people died in the riot.
So when we talk about things current events that happen, like the shooting in Las Vegas, oh, this is the largest massacre we've had on U.S. soil. No, it's not. No, it's not. And see, that's what people need to learn, because it's amazing. In my many years on this earth, I'm just learning about some of them. Right. So where has this history and this stuff been? Why are we not discussing these things now?
Shout out to TulsaHistory.org. Tulsa Race Riot 1921.
So when we're seeing the same thing happen, but when it's rebranded, when it's someone else, it becomes the largest massacre and all this stuff, and we have all this empathy.
Well, we have to speak clearly. When it happens to the white people, it's a crime. Yeah. When it happens to the black people, when they gentrify the black communities, yeah. when they deny us the home loans we deserve to take care of our kids, and force us to have to fend in apartment complexes that are basically ravaged and run down to show and display to affluent white people that drive by as just poor, the image of, or ultimately the image of poverty and the color and race of what poverty looks like. It's all like you mentioned earlier with the red line districts. They want a certain face to be put on poverty. They want, with entrepreneurship, they want a certain face to be put on owning businesses, and it isn't black faces. That's why the struggles of small business ownership are what they are.
Right. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to share something.
Please.
And this is some Texas history that many of us may not know. So I drive around Dallas, and shout out to all of Dallas, the greatest DFW. Shout out to all of y'all.
Cowboy Nation.
Anyway. Deep Ellum, which is downtown Dallas, for those of you that are outside of the DFW area. There's a placard on a building, the Pythian's Temple, the state headquarters of the Grand Lodge of the Colored Knights of Pythia, was completed in 1916. So just jot that date down, downtown Dallas, 1916. There's a historic building marked as a historical marker in downtown Dallas in 1916. Earmark that date. Yeah. Designed by the black architect William Sidney Pittman. It was the most distinctive building in Deep Ellum. A Beaux Art structure made of red brick, it featured tall arched windows and a neoclassic facade. The lodge was founded in Galveston, Texas in 1883. Doubled as a life insurance company or mutual benefits association, providing burial expenses. In its heyday, the first floor of the building had a barbershop and drugstore, community relations, because you guys got to think in those days. So shout out to my boys that are barbers, because I got a lot of homeboys that are barbers. Oski Doski in Denver, Tony, Yachty, Big Worm, Untouchables, Fades. Shout out to all y'all. I got a bunch of boys that are barbers, so just an opportunity to tell them some things, because they taught me some things. So I'm gonna stop right here. Absolutely. I learned how important the barber was to the community. He used to be the dentist. He did quite a bit. He would do stitches, a lot of small surgical things. So the
handyman.
Yeah, he was the handyman. And really think about it. Let's think about even today's barber. When you go get a fresh cut, man, you feel a little differently about yourself. So think about the man that's, he's fell on hard times, hasn't had a job in a little while, gets an interview and gets that haircut. How does he feels differently than he did before.
I feel usually a little motivated, what I mean, like a little inspired to want to do something with my life. You know what I mean? Like this is uplifting, the barbershop.
Right. Yeah, it is. And that's why I wanted to shout out, take a minute, because, that is what industry that we have a large footprint in the beauty and cosmetology.
And let's also keep it real. The barbershop, and shout out to Stan Mason of Behind the Blue Curtain. He was the one that talked about this. That like the barbershop was the community center for the black community. You could go there and you could talk politics, sports, entertainment. You could
bring the community together.
You could have a bad day at work and just be willing to go talk about it with your barber, because the idea is people need to. Not everybody wants to go to church. No offense to the churches, but the church community has their standard. The barbershop has their own.
A place of fellowship. Everyone needs that. Fellowship is important on all levels, on the business networking, on the social network, because if you don't have anybody to relay some of your distress on that can just hear it and take it for what it is, you're bottling up a lot of tension.
The thing is with the church community is, it's a network also, just like business. So the average, the working class average Joes their questions aren't always heard every Sunday. But you know what? You get a haircut probably once to twice a month. So I mean, what's it like to have that therapeutic, time with your barber, and I mean, I'm personalizing it because, I've had conversations with my barber before that
and sorted some things out.
I just didn't realize my head was where it was. And then, sometimes, people can turn you around, just from having a conversation. And then you'll learn a lot about some people that are willing to go deep with you. You can talk about the socioeconomic structure of black entrepreneur, or socioeconomic struggle of black entrepreneurship and black businesses. A lot of us are I noticed a lot of the first black entrepreneurs, they were in the barbershop passing cards around. So, the hustle is, we don't have the confidence elsewhere, but you see it in certain places that you're willing to step up and say, hey, support black business. Here's my card.
Right. Yeah. And shout out to my barber, Chris, at Exclusive Oak Cuts out in Arlington, Mansfield. He's my boy. But anyway, so let's get back to, let me finish this, because this is a good piece of Texas history. This is Dallas. This ain't even just Texas. This is Dallas, Texas history. So we had on the first floor, barbershop, drugstore. So you can come get your medication, get a haircut, get some maintenance done. Right. The second floor and third floor, a dentist and professionals, including a doctor, Dr. P.M. Sunday, and agriculture agent Cedar Walton, father of the jazz musician of the same name. The Golden Chain of the World, an organization, the organization was similar to the Pythians, and the Negro Business Bureau also had an office. The Negro Business Bureau. So we had organizations that were thriving and keeping the bureau of, our organizations together in the early 1900s.
A union already.
Yeah. The fourth floor ballroom, complete with elaborate chandelier, was used for dances, performances, and other community events. We've been talking community quite a bit, right?
Right.
Okay. So this was a place of gathering. In March of 1990, the Fisk Jubilee Singers, who toured the country popularizing African American sacred music, performed classic songs and old plantation melodies in the ballroom. The general admission was a quarter, reserved seating 50 cents. That October, Sergeant Needham Roberts described in the Express as our first colored hero of the World War, the hell fighting heroes. So, even some shout out to our military, obviously there. Our black soldiers, our Buffalo soldiers, our Tuskegee Airmen.
Absolutely, and let's not forget about the soldiers that in Arkansas, the 237 black soldiers that went to fight. We were talking about World War I with our topic, and they went and fought the war, and they came back and were lynched in uniform. Let's remember who we disrespected. You know what I mean? When we start talking about,
I have a personal story. That grandfather,
please,
Tulsa, Oklahoma, he was in uniform with my grandmother, in Army uniform, on a trolley in Shreveport, Louisiana, and was put off a bus in Shreveport in uniform, traveling with my grandmother, in uniform, post-war.
I got family out there. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So after that, it says, under the auspice of the NAACP. So we even had the NAACP was strong back then. Admission was 50 cents, January 23rd in 1923. George Washington Carver. Now here, check this out. Everyone has at least how important George Washington Carver is to history, American history, African American history. He's one of our inventors. George Washington Carver demonstrated sweet potato products for an audience of 800. He was here teaching financial independence, wealth. He came. I did some homework. I'm like you, I do homework. Right. When I found this building, and I noticed, because this building still stands fully erect. I mean, it needs some work. It's been condemned for a while. But as far as its physical structure, sound. It's beautiful. Designed by a black architect in the early 1900s. I looked up the architect, William Snyder Pitt. If you look it up, the way his life ended was he was this affluent guy doing all these great things, and then all of a sudden he get trumped up on some charges, went to federal prison for 2 years, got out 2 years, was on drugs, died in a hotel. So he went from hero to zero just instantly. Now, mind you, he was the son-in-law of Booker T. Washington. He married one of Booker T. Washington's daughters. You think Booker T. Washington let some man married to one of his daughters get that far out of line?
Something like that, yeah, wouldn't make sense.
It doesn't. So what happened to him? Again, I'm gonna ask that question to you guys over and over. You go to jail for some charge. They let you out after 2 years. Then you become some drug alcoholic, and all of a sudden your life is just wasted away. Who does that sound like? We send our veterans off to go do battles for us, and then have some of them come home and they just either disappear or become just part of the universe. It's still happening. And we got to address it, because this building is a historical marker right here in downtown Dallas.
And I also want to add into just the background for those that don't know. Shout out to our roundtable viewers and listeners. Thanks for listening and watching. Deep Ellum is on Texas State Historical Association. I don't know if you were reading from that one.
No, that's a picture. I took
Okay,
a picture of the building.
so Texas State Historical Association. Deep Ellum is an entertainment and arts district on Elm Street, and we're going to get back to Black Wall Street in a second. But Elm Street, east of downtown Dallas. The area was settled as a freedmen's town by former slaves after the Civil War. Its location on Elm Street, just east of Houston and Texas Central tracks near the depot, was too far from downtown Dallas to be desirable. The area was called Deep Ellum, or as early residents pronounced it, Deep Ellum, because of the proximity of the railroad. It was also called Central Track. Several industries were located in Deep Ellum at one time. Robert S. Munger invented a new cotton gin in Mexia in 1883 that revolutionized the ginning industry. We all know how famous cotton was back then. He built his first factory to manufacture the new gin in Deep Ellum in 1884. His Munger improved cotton machine company merged with several smaller companies in 1899 to form the Continental Gin Company. In 1913, Henry Ford opened several regional assembly plants to supplement the manufacture of Model Ts at his Detroit plant. One was built in Deep Ellum and served as the Southwestern Ford Assembly Plant. So right here, we're associating Deep Ellum in Dallas, Texas, with cotton, with slavery. You know what I mean? A lot of the culture,
financial,
the Industrial Revolution. You know, like businesses were developing in that area, white businesses, let's tell the truth. So, you know, a lot of money that wasn't meant for, you know, everyone was being developed in these areas. And, you know, this is the culture today. You go to downtown Dallas, you see the projects or the rundown areas of Dallas, then you hit downtown where the buildings are, where a lot of the live, vibrant city is. You know, a lot of the arts districts that harbor black people typically are in the more rundown areas because, well, that's where the drugs are. You know what I mean? That's the face they have.
That's where the guns and drugs are, and that's where there is no access to capital to reinvest into your property. If you were able to get some good loans on your home and have some equity in the places where you reside, you could reinvest that and continue to build those communities. You have to put grocery stores over there, medical facilities over there, things to stimulate growth, to draw people to spend money over in those areas, because I'm in Dallas all the time.
It also has to look like you're investing in the community. We have to also remember that you brought that point up earlier. Invest in the communities you want to build.
Correct. And if we want, because we can't sit there and ask big corporations to come invest money if we don't have the community ready for the investment. And what I'm saying in that is have ourselves ready, because we have the businesses and the infrastructure going to where now they want a piece of this. Let's build up some of these businesses and communities in the Dallas area. All of you Dallas entrepreneurs, if you're a roundtable member, come find me. Let's sit down, man. There's a lot of things that I'm trying to work on. We're trying to help others. Please reach out. That's what we want to do, is help other entrepreneurs grow their brand while we grow ours. But again, another area here in Dallas that sounds like it was doing well at one time, and it went down. Because I'm going to share a personal story. I have a college-age daughter, and she took her senior pictures just a few years down there in Deep Ellum, and it was down. It was we wanted the rustic, kind of broken down look, you know, broken bottles in the street. You know, that's the look we were going for her backdrop. Now, fast forward 2 years, almost 3 years later, it's back. It's been re-gentrified. Again, another community that was predominantly of color has gone down, and then when white America wants it, now it's revitalized. Access to capital, people. African American people are very capable of creating businesses. We are the innovators and creators of this world and this country. Let's just get it straight. We were the first architects, scholars, historians, explorers, everything. So I just like to be clear about that. And so we're very capable, but we never seem to have those Fortune 500 companies grow to. They always seem to stall out. And that's what concerns me about black businesses. What's going on? And it's just access to capital.
Well, and then you brought up a great point. I want to go ahead and tie a knot on Black Wall Street. So we have, shout out to oneunited.com, you know, just another brief overview of the Black Wall Street. It's titled "The History of the Black Wall Street, America's Largest Black-Owned Bank, One United Bank." The history of actually, we'll fast forward to that. So let's see, where's One United at?
Yeah, shout out to them, because they've been very instrumental in the supporting minority investments in black business. So shout out to One United Bank. I know it's a black-owned bank. I think it's mainly online, but shout out to them. Big shout out to you guys. Hope that we're learning to reinvest in ourselves for a little while. And
go ahead.
And what I want to say this to Roundtable, because I know the Roundtable is a diverse crowd. When we speak of this truth of that we need to reinvest in ourselves. We just want to do what every other culture has done for themselves. Right. And so let's just get it straight. White America has invested heavily in themselves because whether you participated in slavery or not, you bought into a system. Because it's easily at any point, anyone that didn't believe in slavery said, wait a minute, this is wrong. We can't do this to these people. Right. So you bought into a system, whether you participated actively or not. You bought into a system. What we're telling our people is, hey, you need to buy into a system.
Well, and then you're also, let's remember, money is looked at as free speech now. So when you don't invest in your own communities, you are saying, I don't want this business to thrive. And I mean, you may think it doesn't sound offensive. You may think it's not worth listening to, but okay, so when the systematic takeover of racism starts happening, when more black people start getting pulled over in certain neighborhoods than white people, that drive nice cars, it's like, well, and then they have it impounded, or they have trumped up charges. It's like these things don't just happen by happenstance. Like when you choose to fight to be silent in the fight, in the struggle for economic independence, because we have to remember, Immortal Technique said it. You can't have you cannot have political sovereignty if you do not have economic sovereignty. And it's too true today, because if money is free speech, then what is, I asked that question to the round table, what is our political sovereignty? What is our political power if we're not investing in our own messages?
Well, we're going to go to something that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but every time a great African American leader has started speaking up on the behalf of our financial independence and wealth, you know what happened to them?
Disappears.
They die. Martin Luther King. They let a lot of his speeches were good, and everybody loved all of them. But as soon as he started talking financial freedom and financial wealth for African American community, that's when they took him out. And that's happened multiple times. They're not the only ones. We're about to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination, April 4th of next year. This will be the 50th anniversary. So that's near and dear. Shout out to that.
Let's also remember Martin Luther King Jr. was willing to go to jail for his protest. He was willing. He died for his protest, or he died for his cause. He was willing, when he was living, to go to jail for his cause and give up days at work.
Yeah. Days of life.
Days of life. Right. And so for those, I have a 9 to 5 today. It's like, well, those that made the real change, they said, this is my 9 to 5.
Right. Yeah. Your 9 to 5 is lifetime as an entrepreneur. Yeah. It's every day. And that's what people have to realize. And why we get on this roundtable is to open people's eyes, because we've chose this as a life to speak to you guys and give you a perspective to, in the end, open up some eyes to see from another lens. And that's what we hope that you guys get from these conversations. We're just a vessel to get a message across. This man has invited me into his space, and I really appreciate it. So shout out to GCC and the Roundtable. You guys deserve a phenomenal respect, man. Anyone that can speak up and be a voice for the voiceless, I commend them, man. So I really commend you and the community that joined this, man, and even the listeners. If you got the will to listen and at least hear something differently, man, that's one step.
But we also, and I appreciate it, and again, shout out to our roundtable viewers and listeners. But shout out specifically to our entrepreneurs and roundtable, because when you understand what, everyone has an opinion, but when you understand what it means to have economic independence, economic sovereignty, that's what encourages and inspires me to speak freely. I can only stay in my lane, but I'm willing to speak freely so long as I know that I'm dependent on me to survive, not on an employer that incorporates a lot of my profit if I was the employee and hustles me out of the money along with FICA, which is the insurance for the money that I make. It's interesting how we don't necessarily get a say in the money we have to pay to insure our own money. Right. And so but it can get snatched out of our accounts at any time. And the thing is, when you're an employee,
who are you insuring it from?
Yeah, exactly.
You taking that wheel.
You're investing. The insurance is ultimately an investment in someone else's dream. Yeah, you're federally insuring someone else's money. They're just kicking some of it back to you.
Right.
And like that's the hustle that we have to break ourselves away from. And I think that's also where a lot of the political oppression does happen, is when you can control the money, you can control the speech.
Yep. Control the purse strings, and you can docile a whole crowd. And that's what people don't realize is these communities that we've spoken of. I want to speak about my city. There was an area in Denver, Colorado called Five Points, a very historic black community. Again, it was affluent. A lot of the great jazz and blues players came through there, right, and during its heyday. And again, while I was growing up as a youth, it was down. A lot of drug, a lot of crack and guns and violence. And right, now, today, when I go home, it's been repurposed and regentrified. I mean, houses over there probably weren't over $60,000 to $80,000 when I was a teenager living over there. Now there's $300,000 to $400,000 condos, light rails. There's investment capital being invested in that same neighborhood, and they left it a historic marker. You can see all the black history on it, on the walls and the culture and everything is there. Another thing that I'll be honest with you, it pains me. When black people or people of color do graffiti, it was looked at as bad, and it was tickets and fines and right, jail time. Now graffiti's become an art in those communities. It's a cultural
That's
district.
interesting.
It is. Yeah. And so I'm just going to call it what it is. Now that we are not the majority in that area, now spraying on the building and putting art and pictures.
Oh, you're just expressing yourself.
Yeah, expressing yourself, yeah. So that's my community now, and I see it in every city that I travel to.
As we wrap a taste on the Black Wall Street topic, shout out to OneUnited.com. An accusation of sexual assault was the match that ignited the smoldering hatred and resentment of the thriving Black Wall Street community. The accusation inspired a lynch mob, which included nearly 2,000 Ku Klux Klan members who wanted to get quote-unquote justice. Everything came crashing down on Black Wall Street on May 31st, 1921. In just 16 hours, police had arrested 60% of black residents living in Black Wall Street. Mobs burned black-owned businesses and homes and murdered hundreds of black citizens. When black men joined forces to protect their homes, they were ultimately driven out in fear for their lives. By today's estimates, the dreadful and murderous 16 hours caused more than $30 million in damages. The residents of Greenwood were blamed for the death and destruction, and the government made it nearly impossible to rebuild. But we can rebuild a new Black Wall Street now now we're getting to the promo. Basically, invest in One United Bank if you can and where you can, because what we're seeing is the systematic destabilization of black infrastructure. The government doesn't want to help you, and the private corporations don't want you. So you're supposed to fail by natural process of evolution.
So you made a very good point in your reading. So thank you for the reading through that. And again, shout out to One United Bank. Thank you for being there for us. I'm gonna open me account. I'm gonna hold myself to that round table. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna challenge you to open a One United Bank account.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to call out why you won't do it. I think that the racism that exists in, the black-owned networks and the black-owned markets is so adamant. It's so sharp to the point that it's an insult to see a black entrepreneur if you're a white entrepreneur, because it's like, well, in certain cases, because especially when people have designed an image and designed a mythology to where America doesn't look anything but like a white stable. The CEOs of today, Charter Spectrum's one of them. That's the first thing came into my head. A lot of these top dog AT&T, a lot of these top dog, companies, Wells Fargo, you know what I mean? Like even within like the scope of Wall Street, the top owned or the top operators and the top people who move the money are typically not anything but Anglo-Saxon. And see, that says something about the wealth in America. because when people complain about wealth redistribution, they're making the right complaints. They're saying, hey, this isn't fair. The people that look white seem to have all the wealth while everybody else is struggling.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you made in your reading, you made a good point of allegation. Let's take allegation. I love to use past and present things to go together. Right. Allegation. So a whole city, 300 people were killed. A whole city was burned down. Over $30 million worth of wealth was destroyed over an allegation.
Sexual assault.
Today, in 2017, every day I turn the TV on, I hear an allegation of multiple sexual assault, and primarily by our government officials.
A senator has been endorsed by the President of the United States in the state of Alabama to represent the state of Alabama that was caught up in sexual assault like as if it was a casual water cooler.
Right. But a community over an allegation was burnt down over the same thing. Okay, I mean, that makes sense. I don't know. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, what did everybody else do? I mean, why burn the whole community down because an individual allegation? I think you're supposed to get a chance in court, get arrested, get a chance in court to plead your case, and go on about your business.
So they have these things called coup d'états where there's always got to be, the pitchfork crowd they know how antagonistic it would make them look to just shut down a black-owned industry or just shut down a black-owned business, So there always has to be the spark that lights the match, whether it's the radical, whether it's the poor black man that is addicted to crack, whether it's the black man that came into wealth and came into riches, but he doesn't know how to invest his money properly, so he foreclosed on his home or his mansion. He's now hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and is ultimately a slave to the market itself. Like that becomes the image of black people when in terms of you hear it today. It's like, oh well, black men could be rich if they just knew how to invest their money, and it's like, well, that's not even all of it. That's the fact is they want the image that is promoted is for people is almost to make people have the perspective that we don't know how to act when money is put in front of us. So when you watch the music videos of mainstream rap and you see all the Make It Rain and you see dollar bills just floating, it's like, well, all we know is working for the paper. We don't know what it's like to truly invest the paper in something that can define us.
Right. And define your family's wealth, because the paper is just a representation of your wealth. What you have and possess is the true wealth, and that's why I'm gonna encourage all you business owners and entrepreneurs and future entrepreneurs and trying to get back into an entrepreneur, wherever you are in your entrepreneurial spirit, keep going, keep striving for the best. Don't worry about setbacks. Buy the block. Matter of fact, that's what we need to shout out to WeBuyBlack.com and Buy the Block. We Buy the Block. I see they're doing some pretty good projects on Instagram and some things that they've come together. Some people have pulled their money together and started to do some investment projects together. Continue to do that. Build your community up. Get the people of the local community together and come up with some plans. Reinvest in some of the things there that are already there. Make those things great and help each other out. Reinvest in each other. Because
spend the extra money too when you know you can versus comparing it to the market price. Like don't listen to this podcast and say, okay, well, I'm gonna still go to Walmart and buy my clothes because it's closer than and I don't want to burn all my gas to go to the black owned or the African owned business that might cost a little bit more to buy a couple of T-shirts over there or a couple of outfits, but invest.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about that. I'm not an economist, but let me tell you how we can change that. If the black business if you have to spend a little bit more money purchasing his or her equipment, it's because of supply and demand. If he or she is selling more, they can drop their price points because they're buying in bigger volumes. So the more we patronize them, the more they can bring their prices down. That's how Walmart became who they are. That's the whole Amazon model. They have become so big that
the dollar section.
Yeah. You can drive your prices down as long as it's quality. Now I always say, hey, buy your quality what's quality to you. But if you can get the same quality from a minority business, stimulate the small business. It's time for us to do that. Some of these big corporations are so big that you can't do anything about it.
Well, but like we have, the thing is, you're right. Investing in investing in minority business, because it might not necessarily just be African Americans we're talking about. Shout out to our roundtable viewers and listeners. Invest in your small business communities, but because it shows that you're taking a leap of faith through a form of free speech, and a lot of us don't want to do that. A lot of us want to see the black athlete make it to the NFL and be proud of how successful that one guy was, instead of, like you were saying, we've talked about it before, developing a league for the collegiate players, developing a league for the inner city communities to rally, because that's where they're digging and finding the players.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Again, 70% of our NFL is made up of African Americans, but we have zero ownership and very minimal leadership in the high ranks of the NFL. That doesn't make any sense to me. And it's not even like it's a varying 70%. We hold down 70% of that NFL consistently.
Now imagine how, shout out to the round table, imagine how much political power that is when you own 70% of a company, when the employees make up 70% of a company. Imagine how much political power that is. Know that you may not make up most of the wealth, but when you take a knee, when you say, I'm not going to play on Sunday, right, and you can't do anything about it, right, too many people can't say that, or the NFL's, the league's got to start changing some rules.
So I did the math on that one time. If every player of color decided, all right, we're not going to play right now, not one team could play. Not one team would have enough to play offense and defense. Because 70%, you need at least 22 players. It would drop you down from a 53-man roster to maybe like 18 people.
And those 18 people are the most desperate for the money, so then they get looked at differently.
Right.
As the struggle lingers on, but that's the political power.
Yeah, and we don't choose to leverage it the way we can. It's power in numbers, people. The power is in numbers. It's never anything else but numbers. When you want to get something done, and to get an agenda done, it's the power in numbers. If we get behind each other and support each other, we can be great. We're already great. We were born kings and queens. That's what we're heirs of those people.
And I had to put the laptop aside for this one, just as a side note, shout out to our entrepreneurs, and definitely shout out to our black entrepreneurs. We're in and out of live. Shout out to the round table, those who are watching the live feed. We don't invest enough, and we don't back our own enough. We need to also we're not gonna harp on it too much, because this is black entrepreneurship. We want to build each other, right, and that's what this episode is about. But we also need to take the time to recognize that we won't back our own.
Right.
At all costs. We'll always find a critique about our own because we don't know how to. And we need to remember, this is against all odds. In the white culture, the Anglo-Saxon culture, you'll always find in the poor white communities, someone's willing to back their own. Right. When they hear that someone's raising money, for a kidney transplant, raising money to take their kid to invest in a program for their kid, raising money to start their business. Someone's always willing to back their own in that crowd.
Well, we've been shamed into backing ourselves because we see it in every other culture. Our Latino brothers and sisters, they back their own. They're a close-knit community. Right. Our Asian community members, they back their own. Yep. Our Jewish community, our native Indian,
our Asian Indian, and our native Indian.
Both Asian Indians,
Southeast Asian,
Southeast Asian folks. They are a very close-knit culture. We are the only culture that is frowned upon when we support each other. Because if we get too strong, there's a sense of inferiority of the world that if we become ever too strong, that we might be too strong.
We need to remember Willie Lynch was wrong. Black people do not have to fight each other to prove that they are dominant. We can work together. And that's the thing about being an entrepreneur and being a small business owner. We don't have to be a part of the rat race. We can say, I understand, I respect your hustle. You want to work a 9 to 5, and that's enough for you, and you can provide for your family. I respect that. But you know what? My 9 to 5 is investing in my goal and in the image that I want to project for myself, and I'm willing to do that.
Yep.
And see, the thing is that, 20 to 30 years from now, when you have those people, when those people that start complaining about, oh, well, I invested all this time into this company and they won't even give me a 401k. All right, well, don't complain when you didn't hear the advice, or you didn't take advantage of the opportunities that were put in front of you, because there's no one forcing you to work that job.
No. Yeah, and that's the thing is you want to support your culture and your community. There's nothing wrong with that. And you're right. Willie Lynch was completely wrong. He was a horrible individual. He untaught us to love each other and care for each other and grow.
The Mandingo fighting. It's like we don't have to kill each other to show that we're better than someone.
Right. And that's the thing. We got to learn to just do better as a community. This is all, like he said, we're here to build each other up, man. That's why we get on here. I've always been appreciative of him inviting me into this circle, because that's what I come with wealth and love and happiness, and hopefully we can all build together, because I think we deserve a place. We built America, and it's time to get recognized for it. Every day I learn about black inventions that I didn't know that we had something to do with, zero to no credit. Like, do you know that the face on the dime, the lady that did the artwork on that was black? Yeah. And that's amazing. Yeah, I just learned that, and it's like so amazing. Where has all this history been, bro? Like, where has it been? Who had this information? Why is it being released now?
Well, we have to also remember too that the slaves that were brought here from Africa they were not inferior, and they were not ignorant to the point, or at least all of them were not illiterate and ignorant to the point that they were not able to figure out the system. There were plenty of African slaves that they read the Constitution. They read the Declaration of Independence. They knew that if I'm forced to work on this ground, then these rights are mine as well. And I can go to the federal government and ask for support that, wait a minute, slavery is wrong. You can't control, a man cannot say that I'm going to capitalize on the wealth off of someone else's back. Right. African slaves knew that, and they used that knowledge to fight back, but the Supreme Court sat on it before Dred Scott. Right. You know what I mean? That was not the only case. It's the fact that people, and then that's what beats us too. Some people, they see the system and how aggressive it is against us, but how passive it is in working for us.
Right.
And so they get disenfranchised, and they say, well, okay, well, it's not worth me trying to invest in an LLC that costs $300 to then show that I'm willing to invest in my own brand, to say that I can control my wealth.
Right. So I got a buddy I want to give a little shout out to, one of my little G's back in Denver, Colorado. Young man I got much respect for, Jermaine Whittington. He posted something the other day. It says, black people will never admit that they are the main upholder of white supremacy. It cannot work without black people. So if we didn't subscribe to it and allow it to happen and let these things happen and just say, okay, well, you don't want to deal with us, or you don't want to do fair business with us. You'll do business with us, but it usually is a little unfair, or the numbers aren't shaking out right. Then we'll go do business with ourselves. That's all we got to do. And if you don't subscribe to it, it doesn't work. And so we got to grow up and say, so I'm putting a lot of accountability on us. I am a firm believer in all you are is control of yourselves. I can't control white supremacy, but I can control how I let you affect my life. Right. And that's the way I'm choosing to live. Now, if
you don't have to work for a Trump voter if you know in your heart and your soul that, well, I didn't vote for that man, so why do I have to be an employee to someone who subscribes to that culture? Oh, because it's my job. Okay, well, white supremacy. You're now explaining how it was born.
Yeah. We subscribe to it. We've allowed it, especially in today with the World Wide Web. You guys are hearing us talk live if you're out there, world. And we post everything, but we don't do anything. We as a community have got to come together and be more action-oriented. We complain and we talk, and we will get out and march, but a lot of times it's reactive instead of proactive. I want to work with the people out there that are ready to be proactive, like this man, the way he approached me. He's a proactive. Anybody out here that's being a voice for the community, you're proactive. You're getting in front of the problem versus waiting and reporting what just happened. This man reports real-time stuff, and I really want you guys to continue to support him, because I think this is a great thing, man. We need a platform that we can speak to get other people, because there's probably many more of you guys feeling and thinking the way we are. And even if you're disagreeing, you need to hear this too. We're not expecting all of you guys to love this story.
We want you to disagree, because I want to hear the people who oppose the statement that black entrepreneurs deserve equal rights as any other color entrepreneur in America too. And after listening to the history of what's taken place in America, when we've seen black businesses try to thrive and stand up on their own, how they've been attacked, how they've been ravaged, how they've been destroyed, how that culture has just been, hidden, like as if you don't want us to own our own property.
Right. Like, so here, to that point, the same gentleman, Jermaine Whittington, I love the way this guy posts. He goes, you need 0 degrees to own a business, but you needed a degree to go to work for the business owner. Isn't that interesting? You got to learn how to work for the man, whoever the man is. Yeah.
But you got to know the owner has expectations. The slave owner had the whip back in the day, so the expectation was if you do not want to get whipped, you will do it this way.
Right.
Well, these days they'll say if you do not want to get fired, you will do things this way.
Yeah. Or if you don't want this check, you will do things this way. Yeah, we've all been through that. Even through my ranks, just to share a personal story. I'll leave the names innocent because this ain't here. We're not here to bash people, but my ranks have grown up through my professional career. I've always been stagnated at certain points in my growth, but I saw my white counterpart. Oh well, he needs an opportunity. He got to learn. Let's talk outside entrepreneur. Even as a working African American, we deal with different issues. Me trying to be a go-getter and aggressive was always looked at as an inferiority, or hey, you're being too aggressive. Everybody be docile. But when my white counterpart did some of the same things and showed,
he's
a go-getter.
He's going to go get that job.
Yeah. So there was something you said earlier, and I forgot what it was, but it still goes with this segment. As an entrepreneur, if you're not looking for several streams of income, you're not a true entrepreneur. Real entrepreneurs have several streams of income because everything's not always going to be working at the same time. Right. So you need to be looking to do several businesses, entrepreneurs. And not saying you're a business owner of all of them, but be vested in several types of businesses. Your network. Because if you're not creating several streams of income, you're not creating passive income either. But again, here's another stigma that we deal with as black entrepreneurs. If I'm not focused on my one single entrepreneurial path, everybody thinks I'm all over the place. Oh man, you're too busy. You're not, you too all over the place. You're not. But my white counterparts, when he has several businesses, he sells you everything, and you're like, oh man, that dude's a go-getter. He knows everything. He can do multiple things. He's talented. I haven't listened to one multimillionaire, one billionaire, one person that I look up to from a business standpoint that is not vested in at least 3 to 5 to maybe 7 businesses. And they may not run them all, but they're vested in them and they have some type of participation, investment, role, involvement in several streams of income. That's what we got to learn to do. We can build black business by just doing business together.
But you see, it sounds like a good word, hustler, but when you think of a hustler, you think of a drug dealer. You don't think of a hustler that someone that's motivated by money, but they're so motivated in their own independent pathway to pursuing it. No, I don't need to work for another employer that's doing the same thing I want to do, that just that had his own networks, that found his connections, that said that
access to capital,
that I'm going to create my own wealth. You see, and that's not a bad thing for black people to say, I want to have my own wealth, I want to own my own property. I think the biggest honor to our ancestors who were slaves, being the descendant of a slave. I mean, of course, it's like the biggest honor to them is, in my mind, I want to own my own property, to have an LLC, to show America, no, you didn't beat us. We figured you out.
Right. We figured at every game, every time we catch up, they just change it. But this time we're going to figure you out and stop it. Right. That's what the new hustle is. We always figured out. Look at our development. We've had a black president. We have a lot of black leaders. So we catch on every time. So we're proven to be very smart and sharp people, obviously, because we catch up every time. Look at the movie Hidden Figures. I have a technical background. I have an engineering degree. I never heard that story. Worked in aerospace my whole career. Mm-hmm. Never heard of that till the movie came out. Yeah. And that's amazing because I'm going to share a story. I was the president of for entrepreneurs. I'm a sidetrack real quick. If you're going to be entrepreneurship and you're young and you're in college, join some organizations and take a leadership role. because that's where you get your first lessons from dealing with people and things and organization. So if you ain't gonna be the president, be the treasurer, be the secretary, take on a leadership role so you can start learning network. But so it's just amazing how we always get bottled in that one classification that we can't do as much as our white counterparts. I'm telling you, I've seen it in the office, I've seen it in entrepreneurship, and it's the same both ways. When I want to do multiple tasks, it's, hey, I think you're too busy, Steve. What are you doing? I thought you were doing this. I'm like, well, this leads to this, which adds this. You're doing podcasts. I'm like, yeah, I was invited in, and it's part of what I want to do. I want to be a voice to my community.
Right.
This is one of my jobs now. I do this with this man because I believe in it. And so I've taken this on that, whenever you need me, I'm here.
Absolutely. Shout out to Endo Enterprises,
Yeah,
you know.
man.
Yeah, and I mean, just not, I know you're going to finish your thought. We have to always understand that it takes sacrifice to be successful in any facet, in any career. And we've seen people that want to be doctors, black or otherwise, invest years in the schooling.
Yeah. And what we don't realize, every business started out small. Yeah. Everything that you have right in your hand, in your possession, at one time was a small business. Yep. Whatever you eat, whatever you drink, whatever apparel you wear, it started out as a small business. Why not just build our own businesses? Because I think that
for our libertarian viewers and listeners, this speaks directly to the platform of I own myself. And owning your own property is just another extension of that,
right?
And so, but always be willing to peep game, because it's not necessarily about political philosophy. It's just, if you're a person out there that believes that in economic freedom, but true economic sovereignty, that I want what I believe to be invested in how I work,
right? And see, that's what people don't realize. I don't want any viewers to take this wrong, that we're just so pro-black with this, but with, like you said, to have that freedom is true freedom. To have the economic freedom that you want is empowerment, and everyone that it has a heartbeat that's a human being should have that right to achieve that. Right. Now, we all want to work for it, and you have to go earn it, but if you have the capability to go earn it, there should be no restrictions on who and what color or what neighborhood or what zip code you live in to restrain you from being that person. That's all we want. I just want fair access to the same thing anyone in the world has, and I'll go make it. Because it's funny, another thing, like I said, my buddy, he posted some great things. He said, all the way up through slavery, we were never, they never complained about us being lazy, but now post-slavery, black people have been stigmatized as being lazy. We're some of the hardest working people in this world. I didn't say this country, world. I see African American culture around the world. I travel the countries. Our music is all over. We created rap music. When I was young, I don't know how old the community's out there, but when I was a kid, rap music was looked at as a bad thing. Oh, that gangster rapper, that rap. Now it is the standard of music. No one can dispute that.
It's the standard of culture. People want, when the corporate America wants to build an image of the black culture, they bring in a Nicki Minaj.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Immediately.
And they bring in, even in Fox Sports, they bring in people who were accused of rape, who were not respected enough to get into the Hall of Fame. They bring in these icons that people have all of this negative connotations attached to them as a means to show we're with you, black people.
Right. Yeah. And we see it all the time. It's amazing.
As we segue into our final topic, so we've been talking a lot about racism, and we mentioned earlier, the black entrepreneurship and the struggle of being a black entrepreneur, being racism and, classism and whatnot. I also want to touch on an outside topic. We have a poll going around actively for right now in our roundtable community. Shout out to you. Thanks for watching and listening. The SMU police are looking for a crew of 5 after white supremacist banners and flyers appear on campus. Now, this is the same SMU campus when we did the Small Business Saturday about a year ago, talked about, there was discussion of signs being put up about why white women shouldn't date black men. And these same white supremacists, these are neo-Nazis, they want to believe, they're also anti-LGBT. This is the culture that after we were talking about the Black Wall Street and we mentioned Deep Ellum. This is the culture that has always really existed after the Civil War. It's just now they have to try to keep their mouths shut because, well, now you got black people that could be listening to you. So I want to just paint a picture in terms of with Texas being an entrepreneur, a black entrepreneur in Texas, that this is part of our everyday struggle. That do you think that racism, I mean, do you agree with that? That racism is, just going to play the strongest part in the lack of elevation?
Oh, definitely. I definitely agree. And what I tell people, it's not clear as mud, white and black racism. It's economic racism. It's just color is used as a tool to separate us. Because unfortunately, there's a group of white people that there's racism against them as well. They just don't get the same effects we do because we can be isolated by color.
Right, but I mean, we have to remember, Texas was a Confederate state. You have neo-Nazis out there. Still. And then probably are also pro-Confederate, So the idea is with these students, they're supporting the fact that they're so open in their view and so open, and the fact that SMU you represent a culture right now in that area of Dallas. It tells me that that's what that culture represents, racism. So when I, as a black business owner, try to venture through the DFW area and I'm trying to build my brand, it's like, well, that's an area that I'm not welcome in. And well, I thought this was, as a veteran, I thought this place was encompassing of all types of business owners, all types of entrepreneurs. What is it that is so wrong about my view? And we've just been talking about it with the Black Wall Street, like the destabilization of black communities and of black entrepreneurship. It all starts with racism.
It does. It's all majority of that, and I'm gonna tell you, I've even evolved with my personal view on racism. So I'll give just the personal. This is only Steve speaking on his own behalf. I don't care about racism actually, because you know what? Everyone is entitled to feel the way they want to feel, but once your feeling intersects my inner circle of the people or things that affect me, yes, it's my problem. If you decide to be racist in your own community and it only affects you, that's perfectly fine with me. Another thing that I don't like and what makes racism so divisive is it's a one-way street. Think about if we could just be just as racist back. Would it really be racism? I mean, think about it. If we wanted to be just as racist back, start subzoning our neighborhoods and say, wait, hey, if you ain't one person of color, you can't shop or come over here, can't do these things, and start being divisive.
Here's the thing, though. If we start doing that, like, we wouldn't be wrong, but then the black-owned businesses would cut off their own wealth. Because, well, it takes people that are willing to cross the borders and say, well, you know what, I love everybody, right. that are willing to intersect. No, I mean, the thing is, when you want to pursue capital, it's okay to pursue capital outside of the black neighborhoods. It's just the struggle for us is, as entrepreneurs, is we can't convince our own that we can create our own wealth as well.
Yeah. And I was just posing that so people can think through, like, what if other people did it back? What would it be like? Well, what would today be back if we just all were racist against each other? Mm-hmm. If everybody just decided to be completely racist against each other. If you ain't black, we against Latino. It would be what would it be a day like? Reason why this is so divisive is because it's centered around a group of people, African American people, and it's all of us against them. And that's what makes it a divisive thing. Yeah. People have their right to not like people. You can not like our culture and the things that we do. I think I'm okay with it. I think most African American people are.
But it's just hard to watch the NFL today when you see that it makes up 70%. Our community makes up 70% of their industry, and yet they can't get the maximum amount of money because they don't own the Dallas the black people that play, the black players that play for the Dallas Cowboys, they don't own the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott doesn't own the Dallas Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott doesn't own the Dallas Cowboys. He represents them. Mm-hmm. So then the money is not. He doesn't have free speech. Yeah.
So think about that. Let's talk about it because I wasn't even going to get NFL, but you brought it up. Yeah. If an NFL owner can pay anybody from $1 to $5 to $8 to $10 million a year. How much money do you think he's making? You think any owner is paying?
Well, Roger Goodell has now a new $40 million extension added on to his contract.
And he messed up several times. But if we had a commissioner that was of African American, you think he'd have got those chances?
Private jet access as well as health care coverage, full health care coverage.
For life, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, the jet's to get out of here when somebody decides to get him. But so this is my thing. Like you brought up about the 70% African American. If your team is sorry, do like me, turn it off. Because I'm with Cap. I am not gonna lie to you. I'm with him. I'm gonna ride this out with him. I have not seen any NFL this year. I've heard about it. I tease people still about it. I read up on it, but I haven't watched it because you know what?
But we have to. Sorry, go ahead.
I guess I just was going to sum it up with, if someone doesn't stay with this man on the cause and get it back on track, because it was never about the flag.
Right.
It was never about anything, never about the military. Let's remove them. We love our military. We have black soldiers. So why don't we love our military? So
I'm a sailor, but it's okay.
A sailor, but you're still a soldier. But he's sailor. I'm sorry, he's sailor. Let me be politically correct.
Well, the Navy is playing the Army today, so yeah, go Navy.
Right there, you go. Go Navy. Get him. Hey, I'm riding with my boys. So, but that's what makes it so divisive is the separatism of it. So that's all I had about it.
Well, and then let's also remember too, we can support Colin Kaepernick as an independent artist and an independent activist and independent entrepreneur because he may be able to take his remaining wealth and start his own business. Yeah. So we should be inspiring more Colin Kaepernicks in the NFL. We should be inspiring more people who complain about how the NFL screws them on max deals. It's like, well, okay, you could kneel for equal pay or you could kneel for higher contracts. Roger Goodell and the owners, you never hear about them taking pay cuts and restructuring their contracts, but yet the athletes, 70%. 70% of us make up their community, and we're giving more of the money back.
Yeah. And fines, the way they structure fines. Yeah. And has Roger Goodell ever been fined for making bad decisions? He's handled a lot of things.
But why? And the next step is, yes, we have an NFLPA, but why? I don't think the NFLPA, and just in of course my time of watching the NFL, that I don't think the political voice of the NFL is they're not taking advantage of the potential that they can. You see, you are as the product can also deem yourself, property and say that, you know what, I'm going to start an LLC, and we've seen that with the social justice campaigns, it's starting to take off. However, what if to send a message to the NFL that you're not paying us enough? We don't all make millions of dollars. You know what I mean? Those that are having those mid-level guys that are having to fight for contracts and feed their family off of $50,000 a year. It's like, well, the thing is, that's not right. That's not right. You don't get to just make a decision that, well, this is the NFL, you should just be proud that you're playing here. It's like, well, we're still Americans, we're still equal, we're still guaranteed the same rights and freedoms and financial opportunities that you people stole when you came here. So I don't want to hear, they're making millions of dollars. It's like, no, they're not. Everybody is not making. Dak Prescott isn't even making millions of dollars. It's like everybody is not making millions of dollars in sports. They have their employees. They don't own any of that property. When they start social justice campaigns and then they put the emblem on their shoe, everybody that watches the NFL, you need to be doing some kind of background research or be willing to invest in one of those causes, because that is the player right there saying that I own my own brand and this is what I represent. Not just the jersey, but also, the cause.
And they always try and block that. Have you noticed that every time when they go to an interview? Oh, you can't wear these Beats headphones because we're sponsored by Sony or something. Right. So I can't build my brand because of your brand.
That has to hurt my pocket.
Yeah.
Because, well, as an athlete, as a representative of our community, so you get fined for wearing the cleats you want to wear or wearing the headphones you want to wear because, the NFL doesn't have a contract with them. Well, that's the NFL's problem. It's not his problem. The NFL doesn't have a monopoly on capitalism or a monopoly on the free market. Business ownership, you should be able to own whatever, or you should be able to do contracts with whoever you choose to. That's not the fault of Jerry Jones that that, okay, well, he got to talk, he was able to get in bed with multiple, companies and say, well, hey, look, we can all eat between us. What it was is the NFL said, well, we don't want a bunch of money going to one owner, because now one owner is going to be the big dick inside the league and say that, well, since I know how to develop the wealth the best, why don't people just listen to me? And imagine if more black entrepreneurs thought that way.
Right. Yeah. What would the NFL look like?
Imagine black athletes and everything.
Yeah. Well, I support the cause because I think he stepped up, and anybody willing to step up for, like I said, the voiceless, that's commendable. That's a job in itself, to put your own personal life on the line for the wealth and health of other people that you don't know.
And you know what? I hope he does. See, the thing is, as we're wrapping it up, the Kaepernick, he didn't do. He is the very epitome of what we're talking about today with black ownership and black businesses and whatnot. Because if you agree with Colin Kaepernick, and whether you do or don't watch the NFL, why aren't you going in that same direction?
Yeah, he set the path. Yeah, that is the first step of entrepreneurship, is recognizing your own brand, and that's what he's done. He recognized what he stood for, and it was far more worth what someone else was willing to pay him for a job.
I don't blame him for blowing off the NFL. It's like if he never goes back to the NFL, I'm okay with it. Only because I look at it from the perspective that if the NFL is not going to recognize your brand, then you go find a way a platform to get it recognized. Because the NFL knows what this is about. Racism. They're hiding it because it hurts the dollar sales, it hurts the views, but it's reality.
But the crazy part about the NFL, you would think that if 70% of your employment comes from the group of people that are complaining, you would think that they'd take a vested interest. But as long as they're getting what they need, the premier athletes that come from our communities, they're never going to stop. I mean,
that's the hustle of poverty. If someone's giving it all to you, why would you work? Why would you work harder?
Yeah. Why would you work? If those players just came together for a common cause, one time, they'd understand that, hey, if you're not going to take care of all of us, then it's none of us. It's all of us or none of us. And that's really where we need to get as a community, because we need to get healthy, America. The African-American culture has been through a lot. And it may not appear that way because we're very strong and have a lot of good residual, but our community has been through a lot. Historically, if you look at just plain history, we've been through a lot. And we need to repair ourselves and make ourselves strong and believe in each other and build each other up, because we have a lot to offer this world and this country. If you give a lot of us a fair chance, you'd see a lot of great opportunity. I'm meeting a lot of great entrepreneurs, a lot of aspiring people to do great things. And I know that probably a large percentage of them probably are not going to make it. And it's not that I don't think they can. It's just because the opportunity and the access to those things to get there.
And also remember too that it's not a cheat to want to go to the government for assistance as a black entrepreneur, to say that I'm a black business owner and that I have my own voice. Like freedom of speech, you know what I mean, protects it doesn't just protect the popular business owners or the big business owners, it protects the small business owners. Utilize the SBA, Black America, because that's how we get back on track with developing more Black Wall Streets.
And let me give you just a fact. If you don't support small minority business, you're basically making big business stronger, because if you don't have options, they can get bigger and stronger. Because when they're the only option, that's when they get to set the price point of what they want.
And that's what the so-called true capitalists are scared of: true capitalism, true competition. Of course, people have no idea what life would be like if NBC or ABC or Fox didn't exist. Some people have no idea what would happen if a small business market toppled all three of those big networks. They have no idea. And that's because we've been taught and trained in the ideology that, well, these businesses deserve to be here. So you mean to tell me small businesses don't?
Right. Yeah, and networks. We need a network, because that's a huge thing. Communication. Communication is huge to the community. There needs to be a network that speaks to our community, and I know there's some people out there that do. There's a Dr. Boyce Watkins, Dr. Umar Johnson. Those gentlemen, so shout out to you guys. I follow you guys. And if you guys are listeners or ever get a hold of this, hey, I appreciate you guys, and we need more of that. If you guys have a skill that you can offer your community, do it. If you can teach accounting or, some finance, let's teach each other some skills, man. Let's really get out there and start building up, because small skills, if you got a school that can teach people plumbing or electrician, we're going to need those skills to rebuild our communities.
We're going to need more lawyers too to help understand. Like when you pass the bar exam, for all of our future politicians and future lawyers and judges, it's like understand that the system. When you learn how the game works from that perspective, utilize your abilities at the lower level, at the grassroots level. How can I get more of it?
Right. Yeah, and that like you said, that's what you said so many times. That's the hustle. If nothing else, hustle for yourself and hustle hard for your community, because that's where you got to go lay your head. If you're not willing to reinvest in your community, why would you want to lay your head there? And then some of us, we've decided to take great flight and go into communities, the suburbs, and now people are coming back in the inner city, whatever, after they've been regentrified. Right. Why we didn't just build them up from the beginning and stop letting us tear them down. So that's why I want people to learn. Wake up, stop complaining, right, and let's go do something about it.
Go get it. Go get your wealth.
Mm-hmm. And do some community work. Some of it is not all about wealth. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a huge advocate as an entrepreneur to give to the community so the community will give back to you. So go do some, if you want people to come spend their money with you, they got to be healthy and have a little bit of wealth to come spend their money.
They have to have a reason, absolutely.
Yeah. So you doing some work in your community, making sure people are okay and healthy, that leads to people patronizing your business. Yeah. So take a vested interest in the community and the people around you.
And on that note, we're going to end with the roundtable quote of the day by Harry S. Truman. There is nothing new in the world except the history you do not know. Shout out to Indo Enterprises. Shout out to the roundtable community. Shout out to the viewers. Shout out to the listeners. And shout out to the entrepreneurs.
Yes, sir. Shout out to the roundtable, man. I appreciate this, brother. I really do, very sincerely. And since we both are rocking Harriet Tubman, shout out to the Underground Railroad, man. We represent dead or alive. We coming for our freedom, baby. We out.
You guys are watching and listening to Roundtable. Happy holidays.